Okay, we're going to get started with our meeting. Thank you for those of us who've joined us virtually. And if you're watching this as a recording, we're happy to have you here as well. My name is Christine O'Neill. I'm an environmental planner with the Naugatuck+Valley Council of Governments. I'm pleased to serve as the technical lead on this project. My colleague, Craig Stevenson, is the project manager, and he'll be running the Zoom and slides tonight. So tonight we're focusing on projects located in Naugatuck, Oxford, and Seymour. We'll start off with Naugatuck at 6, Oxford at 6:30, and Seymour at 7. If you could advance the slide, please. Okay. NVCOG is the regional government for 19 municipalities in West Central Connecticut. Our mission is to support our communities with transportation, land use, and environmental planning, and find economies of scale through shared services and programming. NVCOG received a grant from the state's Climate Resilience Fund to design upgrades for culverts and drainage systems at 9 sites throughout the region. The money will flow from the state to our organization and ultimately benefit the 9 communities that you see on the screen. Our goal is to reduce flooding with new infrastructure that can withstand climate change projections through 2050 without compromising the stream-based habitats and ecosystems. Next slide, please. We've partnered with engineering firm Luke's and environmental nonprofit Save the Sound to achieve these goals. These partners will gather field data, conduct surveys, assess fish passage, analyze alternatives, and ultimately produce a 30% design, preliminary design for each of the sites. Then they'll identify federal funding sources and draft a grant narrative that can be used to apply for that funding. It's important to note that the scope of the projects we're discussing tonight is strictly about design work and not any construction. Next slide, please. Sorry, folks, hopefully you can still hear me with a little bit of vacuuming going on outside. So this is our first of 2 sets of public meetings. Tonight, we'll gather your input on potential site improvements that can be incorporated into the design work. And the second set of public meetings will take place later in 2025, and that's when we'll share the results of what we've come up with. In both cases, we want to hear from you and get public input and feedback. At this point, I'm happy to turn it over to our project partner, Paul Woodworth with Save the Sound.
Thanks, Christine. Save the Sound is a regional environmental organization that is focused on a lot on Long Island Sound, but we also work upland in watersheds that drain to Long Island and cover all of Connecticut and regions of New York that drain to Long Island Sound as well. We fight climate change, we save endangered lands, we protect the Sound and its rivers and water quality, and work to restore ecosystems. And I'm the director of the ecological restoration team, and I'm happy to be working on this project with NVCOG and Luke's. Next slide, please. So to this project, we bring an interest in restoring as much ecological value as we can. And when it comes to bridges and culverts, we're looking to redesign them in a way that is beneficial for safety and flood resilience, along with habitat and wildlife. And undersized culverts create obviously flooding problems and resilience concerns for a lot of communities around our area, but they're also impeding the movement of fish and other wildlife. And so we look to restore that kind of connectivity by increasing and redesigning stream crossings. Next slide. We also are looking, as part of this project, looking for opportunities for reducing rates of runoff and polluted runoff by increasing infiltration. A lot of hard surfaces, roads, parking lots, rooftops, which don't allow for rainwater to infiltrate into the ground, force us to think of creative ways of redirecting that flow and getting it back down into the ground rather than running and racing to the nearest stream. So we look for like rain gardens and similar bioswales and similar ideas to infiltrate as much rainwater as possible. Next slide. And while this may not be directly relevant to the project sites that we're talking about tonight, but we do look at opportunities for expanding natural floodplains where they may have been naturally constricted by man-made activities, so flood walls and levees. But again, I don't think that's coming up tonight. So With that, I can pass it to Luke.
Uh, Good evening, everyone. My name is Ron Nault with Luke's Consulting Engineers. We are assisting NVCOG and working with Save the Sound in the elements of providing improved stormwater management through climate resiliency. Tonight's meeting is introductory, part of our listening tour. This meeting is meant to inform the public of the grant and its goals and purpose, hear of any local input, and send us on our way to begin the design of proposed alternatives. There will be a second follow-up public information meeting once we have had a chance to perform our engineering and environmental tasks, where we'll be back to present the findings and review recommendations from this analysis. The project is carved into elements where each of the member towns submitted drainage problems, drainage issues in their towns with localized boundaries. Terry Gallagher, an engineer project manager from our office, will go into those in more depth tonight. Naugatuck, Seymour, and Oxford specifically. Talk about the geographic limits, our observations from our initial field investigations, and then seek public input. So with that, Terry's going to begin the review of the Naugatuck project.
Okay, thanks, Ron. Yeah, if you could move, yeah, that's good. The Naugatuck area is on the west side of town. It's to the north of Rubber Avenue, and it's in the Long Meadow Pond Brook watershed. It's urban street flooding on a steep hillside above Rubber Avenue. They've had a chronic recurring damage from inadequate storm drainage, being hit with localized high intensity storms causing a lot of street flooding. This borough has worked to correct some of the problems, but due to limited funding, they've only been able to install some new storm drainage in the project area. So we had met previously with Danielle Goey, the grants administrator, Jim Stewart, the public works director, and other members of the DPW and engineering department staff to go over the areas they felt were the most critical. Next slide, please. The area they selected is between Millville Avenue from Legion Field over to Fern Street, Fern Lane, down Highland, and over toward Townsend Avenue, where they have done some previous storm drainage. The borough is in the process of installing new storm drainage, large storm drainage in Rubber Avenue as part of a project this summer when the flood hit in August 18th and caused a lot of damage in Naugatuck. Also caused a lot of damage in Oxford and Seymour. I think this area is the epicenter for most of the flood damage in the state. Really highlighted that if you go to the next slide, please. Okay, this is the neighborhood we were walking around in. It's showing the construction that's going on in Rubber Avenue. They're installing a 60-inch storm drain there as part of their project and taking that and extending it to Long Meadow Pond Brook and extending it to Aetna Street, which we would be tying, the borough would be tying in at Aetna Street and working their way up the hill towards some of our project area. And we would be looking at ways to optimize the storm drainage network that's in place and see where we can make improvements to get better conveyance down the hill such that it would not be flooding the streets and impacting residential properties. They have some larger size pipes, but they're tying into smaller size pipes, which is never good. So they're trying to work that out. And the other photos are where we were walking the neighborhood with the public works staff, looking at all the different issues. There's a number of areas where possibly there might be some opportunities for doing some reductions in runoff. We're going to explore those with Save the Sound to see if we can cut down the runoff that's causing the street flooding. But we also have to maintain access to a lot of densely developed residential neighborhoods that have some narrow right-of-ways with a lot of underground utilities. One of the challenges is to relocate things in such a way that you're not causing a lot of utility relocation and construction costs. Next slide, please. Oh, that's good. Yes, this is the photos of businesses the day after the flooding in August 18th, scraping up mud off their parking lots and trying to restore their businesses. They had a lot of damage. There are places where drainage inlets in the hillside got clogged with debris and caused catch basin grates to pop off the catch basins and water to burst down the street. There were other areas where the pavement has been experiencing damage because of repeated flooding. So we're going to try to add extra inlets and piping to correct those problems for the borough. Next slide, please. That being said, it's a collection of where people are seeing the most flooding in their neighborhoods and where they feel there's places that could be corrected to help lessen damage to private properties and public infrastructure. So if anyone from Naugatuck is here, we're here to listen to you tonight. Anybody else on?
Members of the public out there, if they have questions on Naugatuck.
They're interested in Oxford.
I don't know what they're interested in. But they don't seem to have any questions on Naugatuck. So I'm presuming they're Oxford. Oxford.
Herman or Mike, can you hear us okay? Online? Please feel free to unmute yourselves if you have questions. Okay, great, they can hear us, so I guess they're not here for Naugatuck. Suppose we should.
Yeah, we have all the maps for Naugatuck with us. If anybody comes in later on, we're here. Can answer any questions later on in the presentation. Go to Oxford. Next slide, please. Oh, okay. We'll give it a second then.
Make this message that he was interested in Mountain Road and Seymour. He's happy to listen to Oxford.
So Craig, is that okay if we, since no one from Naugatuck online or present, we go into Oxford and then
Absolutely.
be here for Naugatuck should they arrive?
Okay. Well, for the Oxford project, it's really the flooding at Kirk's Pond here and how it impacts the central firehouse and the ambulance facility.
Craig, go back one if you would.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. This is the approximate project area along Route 67, just to the south of the town hall. The firehouse has experienced repeated flood damage from a variety of high intensity storms. We're working very closely with Karen Cook, the grants administrator. We met with Scott Pelletier. Thank you for being here tonight. The fire chief to discuss their problems. We've talked to the folks at the ambulance facility regarding theirs, and we've been out doing surveying and starting the process. We've also touched base with the town's engineer and the town's economic development director for their ongoing sidewalk streetscape projects they're doing that they have planned for the area. So we're collecting a lot of information for the project. Next slide. Oh, there we go. So there's a photo of Kirk's Pond. It's a local landmark. Gets used for public recreation. It's mostly a recreational pond at this point, but it's got a long, skinny stream that feeds it. There's not a great deal of difference between the normal water surface level of the pond and the first floor of the firehouse. There's a little bit of a berm built around the back, but if the culvert that leaves the pond and goes toward Route 67, if that gets clogged with any debris or whatever, there's really not much extra capacity until the pond overflows and then flows into the parking lot, and then can either go in the doors for the ambulance building, for the ambulance facility in the back, or the fire station in the front. And I'm sure the chief will had some very great photos of the damage that the fire station had received in the past, and he'll show those tonight if he has them. And you can see the parking condition of the parking lot. It's all cracked up from all the flooding, and the area as you go south along the Grange Hall, the overflow seems to go that way. There is some drainage that goes underneath Route 67, but in a very large flooding event, it seems like the water is going down Route 67. And could you do the next slide? Oh, and this is the FEMA map for the area, and it shows that brown plume as being an area of flooding, approximate flooding in the 500-year storm. What it doesn't show is where you get these sharp, high-intensity, shorter duration storms that can also cause flooding. But it basically shows the area where flooding is going in front of the fire station and going toward the Little River. Next slide, please. And this is photos after the flooding on August 18th, and there's some debris that's caught in the mouth of the culvert leaving from the pond, which restricts its capacity. There's cones along Route 67 where the pavement was all torn up in front of the Grange Hall next to the fire station, and it showed areas which have now been restored, but it shows the type of damage that was going through there. I'm sure the actual flooding footage on Sunday afternoon when all this was going on was tremendous. Next slide, please. So we have been out doing surveying. We've been using some of the town's maps that they have, record maps of the facility, but some of those are older. So we've located the firehouse, the first floor, all the doors, the equipment pad elevations, the doors and windows going into the ambulance facility in the back. And we've mapped the storm drainage coming out the front parking lot, portion of Route 67, and the drains going across the street from Route 67. We've also mapped the drainage going down Route 67 where the town is planning their sidewalk improvements and where they've done repairs due to the flood damage. And we have those as larger scale maps in the back of the room if anybody wants to look at those in detail. So basically what we're looking at here is there's undersized pipes. We're going to look to see if there's an opportunity to either decouple the pond drainage from the drainage in front of the firehouse. We may look at opportunities to have a new culvert going across the street toward the Little River to divert runoff around the firehouse. And we're going to try and look at ways to reduce damage to emergency services facilities, which are a critical need for the community when they're responding to flooding elsewhere in town. You don't want to have your ambulance facility or your central firehouse out of commission during a large storm event. So, and that's where we are right now with the project, and we're here to take public input. There we go. Well, I don't know if the Oxford folks want to say anything about the flooding here, or just want to go straight to public.
Excuse me, this is Herman Schuler. is this gonna be covered under the FEMA reimbursement? Hello?
Hi, Herman. Yeah, I'm sorry, we're having a little trouble hearing you. You asked if this will be covered under FEMA reimbursement?
Yes,
No, so this is not associated with the August 18th storm. This is a long-term project that was identified a while ago in a natural hazard mitigation plan, and it's being funded through a climate resilience fund. I should say the design work of it is being funded by a climate resilience fund grant from the state.
is that ending up on our utility bill?
No, this is funded through a Connecticut DEP grant. It has nothing to do with the utilities. It's basically funded through any tax you pay to the state.
Okay.
Oh, Herman, are you in the project area? Can I ask if you live near the fire station or Kirk's Pond?
No, I'm involved in a number of things in the town. And I was involved with the road during the disaster. I was a volunteer on the road recovery team.
Oh,
I just did some data gathering and organization so that we could basically submit all of our damage to FEMA in a organized way.
oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much for your assistance. Do you have any other comments about this project or any questions, Herman?
No, it's, I mean, obviously you got to empty the pond faster than it fills, so it's a buffer. But when it fills, okay, it's no longer a buffer, it becomes a problem. And, obviously there's not enough culvert capacity to basically take the pond into the little river, which is where it needs to go. Otherwise, it's just going to do damage somewhere else.
We
that's why
a box culvert in that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, something much larger than what's there.
So as we discussed a little bit earlier, we're in the very initiation of the engineering side. We've done survey. We will be back to you with real solutions, but for certain, rest assured that we recognize that it's a culvert capacity problem and also a clogging problem, and we're going to look to address both of those. Even the best sized culvert, if clogged, doesn't really work. And since you have so little margin for error between the pond level and the firehouse, that we can't absorb any clogging factor. So we'll be looking at extra means for prevention of that, above and beyond even what's typical, and it might include a trash rack or some kind of diversion structure so that this can't happen just due to clogging. And it will likely also result in a larger size culvert.
Okay, well, the larger size culvert makes sense. And, the clogging, I mean, you got to find a way to solve that, but it's not like you can empty the pond, right?
Yeah, we'll list all options, but I'm assuming the pond is a treasured fishing resource for local families, and the draining the pond will probably not be a doable option.
Well, yeah, but there has to be an intake at nominally the pond level, right? So, and it's got to be big enough, all right, to basically accept the overflow and maintain the level of the pond. Otherwise, it floods the building. And your problem is if you have sticks and debris, okay, that basically floats into the pond, it plugs that metering device, right? And so therefore it doesn't empty the pond when it goes above a level. So
One thing that occurred to me when I was out at the site looking at it, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off if you were still talking. Was that the weir that drained, this is essentially a small dam. It's, I happen to deal with a lot of dams, and it's not why I came onto this project. I didn't expect to be talking about dams at all, but that's basically a small dam. It's a fixed weir that's about 1 to 2 feet in height. If that was replaced with a flashboard structure of the same height, then that is something that could be pulled in advance of a forecasted rain event to draw down the pond 1 to 2 feet and then allow it to refill. So it would give 1 to 2 feet of freeboard or additional fill before it starts to overtop. Now, that means that somebody has to maintain that and monitor that. And I assume that would be a fire department, staff member or something. So I don't know if that's an appealing idea at all. But it likely is a lot less expensive than putting in a new culvert, which I think may still be in the mix here, but it could gain, because it's such a small watershed that 2 more feet in that pond might be a substantial amount of storage that would significantly reduce the number of times that you have nuisance flooding events out onto the parking lot. So I'm curious what the fire department would think of that.
Scott, you're there. What do you think?
All right, can you hear him online?
No, I can't hear him.
Okay, hang on.
We have to turn it on. I don't think it's been turned. No, it's.
So the north side over the years keeps eroding and washing down and is getting lower. It used to be a lot higher. So building that back up probably would give us another 18 inches of capacity in the pond, because the south side, basically going towards the school, old school, is high. And if we can put that back up, because it's been eroding, the pond's been getting a lot wider, and it probably needs to be dredged a little bit on the far end. The end closest to the dam is pretty much on ledge. There's not much. When they did the dry fire hydrants there for training, they're in as far as they can go, and there's ledge there. So you have a couple of different obstacles at that outlet. So building up a little bit along that side, making that a little higher and bringing it back to the regular level, I think that'll be a big help as well. Getting it off the main drainage system around the firehouse would even be a bigger help. We tried back when we redid the firehouse to have that happen, but it just wasn't in the cards at that time. Those are the kind of things, moving the board, if we have to put a board or something in there, mechanism, that'll be between the fire department and public works. So, we'll figure that out. We do a pretty good job at making sure that thing is kept clear because of the issues with all the flooding. We try to get down there and clean it out, and before a storm, I know they're down there making sure there's no sticks or anything in there. We found a trash can in one of them stuffed 2 storms prior to the big storm in August. It made it all the way out to an outlet down on the other side, and it was backing up. So they were able to unlodge that, and that helps. So
I had a question for Paul. I noticed there's a lot of grassy area on the other side. Is there opportunity for green infrastructure here?
When you say the other side, you mean the
Sorry, opposite the firehouse?
west, okay, but still around the pond?
Yes.
Um,
but I'm calling the north side, I think she's talking about.
yeah,
Side closer to town hall.
Yeah.
I just walked by it today when I came here, when I pulled in.
there's space there to do stuff, but I'm not sure there's anything that can reduce flows into the pond. You know what I mean? Infiltration in there would basically be feeding the pond. And so my immediate answer to that is it's limited what we could do there.
Christine, just in general, not only this project, but all of the 9 projects, we will be looking in the watershed to see if there's opportunities for upstream detention, or flow reduction, recognizing Paul's view that here at this location, perhaps not, but and also water quality improvements too. Water quality doesn't seem to be the issue so much here as it is for Naugatuck or Waterbury, like we talked last night.
So this has me thinking though, where did these parking lots drain to in this building? Do we know that?
They drain into the pond.
They drain directly to the pond?
Well, no, they go through woods and then they gradually get down to the pond.
Sheet overland flow.
Yeah, I assume it's sheet. I haven't checked to see if there's a pipe off the back of the parking lot or anything like that, but it's.
Okay, that's what I was gonna suggest. If we knew there was drainage going from these parking lots right into the pond, then they would make sense to direct it the other way. And that, if you're saying it's already going that way. Okay, all right.
Can we get your address, and are you adjacent to the pond as well? No. Um, Was there a second person online that's Oxford? Oh,
Well, like Herman Schuler is still online, okay, but I don't live anywhere near this thing, okay? I'm just a interested resident.
Yeah, Herman, sorry, if you have additional comments, by all means, please feel free to share.
No, we're good with what I said. I mean, it's to me it's a larger culvert, and it's a larger outtake pipe, okay, that you put into the pond. And then of course you got to basically prevent the debris from going into the outtake so that it doesn't plug the culvert, and that that kind of settles it. But we had 1,000-year storm, okay, not 100-year storm. So I don't think anything would help that. You can't build it for a storm like that. You just have to take your lumps.
Yeah, the August storms were pretty extraordinary. I don't know any sort of engineering.
No, exactly. Exactly. I mean, if you increase the size of the culvert and the outlet pipe, you would still have overrun it, okay? Because I mean, we had 2 months or 3 months worth of rain in 2 hours.
Right. Absolutely. Okay, well, if that's it for Oxford related comments, then I suppose we could move on to Seymour unless you had anything else to share, or
No, I think we're fine. Obviously, we support it.
wonderful. Thank you. All right, take it away, Ron and Terry.
we'll move on to Seymour.
For the Seymour project, Seymour is on Mountain Road. It's between Route 67 and Brook Street. It's on a sharp bend in a steep road in a residential neighborhood, suburban neighborhood. It's an older culvert, and the culvert is prone to clogging. It's a 30-inch RCP. And that's why the Seymour Public Works Department and the Seymour Town Engineer put it on their list to NVCOG to fix. When the culvert gets clogged, the road gets overtopped, and Public Works is tired of cleaning that out constantly. So they like to see something a little bit bigger. It's got a very nice little stream feeding it. It's got a decent sized watershed. We're working closely with Save the Sound to analyze the stream so that we can figure out what the best system is for replacing the culvert and fixing the stream. That one. Next slide, please. This stream it's a small stream. It's a map FEMA floodplain. They mapped it by approximate methods saying it floods in a 500-year storm. But what's happening is it's flooding whenever there's one of these high intensity, short duration storms too. So it's a recurring flooding problem. The culvert itself, it's right along the town line with Oxford. The culvert is actually in Oxford, but it is the Seymour takes care of Mountain Road. They do all the maintenance. So Seymour is handling this as part of their project. Next slide, please. And as I said, it's a very steep road. We've been out doing surveying on it. It's gets a lot of residential traffic. It's a collector road that comes down from the high school area to Route 67. They said there's a picture there of the existing 30-inch culverts, an old stone head wall with some interesting scupper drains coming in off the road. And the downstream culvert, it's going through the edge of a residence lawn, and it's got stone walls on both sides. So it's a little bit constricted on the downhill side. Next slide, please. It also has sanitary sewer and some other utilities through there. So we're getting elevations of the sanitary sewer to use for design of the new culvert. The channel upstream, as I said, it's actually pretty nice going upstream. The wooded channel, and Save the Sound has been out looking at that. We are also going to look, there's some little detention areas upstream in the watershed to see if there's anything we can do to reduce runoff going to Seymour and Oxford. And there's a nice natural stream further down that downstream below the culvert that maybe there's some things there that can be done to help improve the quality of the stream. Next slide, please. And that's just the progress topo that we have of the culvert and the stream, and we've had wetlands flagged along that area. So we've got some surveying done, we're getting utilities in, and we have to add some right-of-way mapping, but we're moving forward after we hear from the public what they have comments on for the Seymour project. Next slide, please. And so our goal there would be to upgrade the culvert capacity, get something that works with the surrounding infrastructure and properties, and hopefully improve the stream capability. I don't know if Paul, you want to say anything about the stream and the Seymour side?
I can. I know we have one of the local landowner just entered the room, so we're I don't want to cut them off, and if you do have any comments to make, just come up to the podium. You just entered. Yeah, that's fine. Just yep. So yeah, we're ahead of schedule a little bit. He just went through some of the basics of it. the thing that I will say is that, yes, it is sort of a naturalized stream. The landowner actually who's here informed us that the stream had taken a much different course. It has been straightened by when Mountain Road was built, and it took a more natural bend through the front yard of the house that's right on the outer bend of the road there. And just, so it's a 30-inch RCP, but it's a 23-foot wide channel. So that right there just turns into nothing but problems. And, the landowner's been removing material from it, and so is the town. We would be looking to create a stream crossing structure that is a little bit wider than 23 feet. And that, may not be possible in all that space, but that's where Save the Sound would be looking to. Sort of our starting point. And it is a steep stream, so it's really a lot of boulders material and actually what appears to be some bedrock downstream of the crossing there. So we would be recreating some kind of boulder bedrock type steps through the stream crossing if we can go with an open bottom structure. So that's kind of the approach that we'd be looking at. We need to sort of collect a little bit more information to develop a design like that. But we can work with Luke's on the constraints around those ideas.
We can leave it to the public to speak. Your timing is impeccable.
Yeah, if you could, some people online can hear. Tell us your name and your street.
Sure. My name is Tony Arado, and I live at 18 Mountain Road.
Oh, Tony.
And the
Tim, he's
stream
here.
crossing
Tony,
under the road happens
18
right
Mountain Road?
in front of my property, literally at the end of my driveway. So I'm here today just to get a sense of what's planned. We try and take good care of our property, and we have concerns over anything that might change how it looks. We understand that whatever has to be done has to be done, but we'd love to be privy to what the plans are, just so we're prepared.
Oh.
Well, actually, we have no plans right this second. We're just in the data gathering phase. So,
Sure.
so this is good timing.
You said the guy's name was Tony, that's why I
Yeah,
said that.
we're basically, it's a small enough, it's a pipe that probably works in really low flows, but it's small enough that it can easily get clogged with debris, and
That's
then
exactly what
it
happens.
overflows the road and probably damages your property and washes out stuff along the banks in a really big storm. What kind of damage did you see from the August storm?
You're exactly right. The pipe works 99% of the time. My neighbors and I try and keep it cleaned out as best we can just to avoid any problems. When and if it does plug up on the high side, the water comes over the road, but doesn't really do any damage. It just sort of flows over the lawn and over the driveway and through the shrubbery. And then
That
when
must
the
be
storm
good.
is over, except for some raking and sweeping, it looks like nothing ever happened. I understand that maybe the pipe will be removed. At one point, the town engineers told us that they might go in there and take out the single pipe or maybe add a secondary pipe to the existing pipe, next to the existing pipe. That was years ago. I understand that maybe there'll be more of a natural culvert built, like a 3-sided culvert. Does that sound right?
That's a possibility. Yeah.
Possibility.
From the we haven't done any soils testing on the road, but from the sanitary sewer maps we've gotten from the town, it looks like there was a lot of ledge there. They had to blast to get the sanitary sewer through.
Absolutely.
And the existing culvert's got kind of a, if you look through it, when we look through it, it's got a funny bend in it. It looks like maybe they were wrapping it around a rock of some type when they were first building that. So where I'm anticipating whatever it is, it's going to involve some type of rock removal.
Yeah. The way we refer to it as the brook. The way the brook is on our property is it's very deep, maybe 5 feet below grass elevation, and you sort of walk up to the edge, walk over. It doesn't slope down gradually. It's literally a drop off. But my wife's grandparents owned a property before we did. And so we know some of the history of the property. And from what we're told, there's a lot of boulders and fill that was brought in when the stream was rerouted over the years. So my concern is that if someone goes in there and tries to swale or pitch or angle the embankment of that brook, they might run into more ledge or large boulders that were placed there mechanically and not necessarily naturally.
As Terry had stated, we're here at the initiation of the engineering, but it seems likely that we're looking at a wider three-sided culvert or something less prone to clogging, that more replicates the natural stream width, et cetera. So, and that'll also help to reduce clogging because, 30-inch pipes are, all it needs is a stick to start the process, and then more debris collects up against it, and next thing you know, we're overtopped and causing washout downstream. So just as the Oxford project problem, clogging is, and it's not often factored, but we think of a flow, we'll determine 100-year or 50-year flow and a culvert size. We have to properly include clogging as part of the solutions.
Got it. So if you had to guess and you had a 30-inch pipe there currently, would it have to be 3 times as wide?
Hard to say just this minute, but it seems like from Paul's perspective, the wider the better, to try to get back to the natural stream width
Gotcha.
as well.
But every project has its own resources. We're going to come up with a series of designs for NVCOG and the town to review. We'll do cost estimates for each of them. The idea being that those cost estimates and preliminary designs could then be used by the towns and NVCOG to go out and get maybe some state funding or federal funding to actually implement this. Right now, there's no funding for actual construction and final design. So we're going to try and make the culvert design as environmentally friendly as possible to attract the widest group of possible funding sources we can help the towns obtain.
Right.
So we'll have different options, but for instance, the project for Oxford with the fire station, because it's critical facility,
right,
we'll probably have to design that culvert for a bigger storm than we would for this particular road. But this particular road, does it ever get icy when it overtops in the winter? It's a sharp bend. I've seen that somebody's hit the guide rail there a few times and nicked the utility pole at least once.
Yeah.
It's a very sharp bend. So I mean,
sharp bend.
So it's a little bit of a traffic issue too. It's not just how much you can rake away the grass at the end of the storm, but it may be that this one's designed for a smaller culvert, but we'll look at different options and see what works in this situation.
1991, I can't remember ever having a storm in the winter where the water came over the road. It seems like it's always summer and springtime heavy rains where the water comes over.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if that's based on the fact that the sticks and debris are frozen or whatever it is, and it might not gather as quickly as the water's rushing down Mountain Road to then go through that culvert, through that pipe. But
when we met with the town engineer, I recall him saying that a development has occurred upstream of you that has its own detention pond system. Part of it is we'll look to see if that can be improved or modified to reduce flow at this location.
I think also there's a couple of houses that might be abandoned, for lack of a better word, and therefore those properties aren't being maintained. Maybe if they were, there would be less debris in the stream.
Yeah.
Speaking of the pond, I did just want to acknowledge a written comment here. Mike put in the chat, this is right down the road from me, no issues with me, not related to this, but years ago, the town put up curbing. This just funnels the water down to the pond instead of cascading off Mountain Road down into the ravine. I don't know if he's talking about the same pond you just referenced,
Yeah,
but
perhaps, I thought it, in Terry's package, don't you have some plans from the town? Showed, or pictures you had?
We had pictures of, we were doing some surveying out there after the floods, and the town there'd been scour behind the curbs where it was coming down a steep road. The average grade of the road is about 10% coming down the hill.
Craig, could you go back a couple to see the
Um,
pond, to see if the curbing is shown?
Yeah, there were areas where the side of the bank had been scoured out. So there's some opportunities.
Yeah,
to
there's the
do-
pond.
one more, I think.
No, isn't that the detention pond lower?
Oh, that's the little detention pond that's up by, Brook Street.
Brook Street.
said he's talking about Hoadley's Pond, HOAD.
Oh, no.
That's directly in front of you as you come down to the bottom of Mountain Road.
Yeah, this is the upper right-hand corner. It's a picture where Mark's standing, getting at the catch basin inverts where the town had just come through and fixed some of the washout behind the curb.
Absolutely. Yep.
There may be some opportunities we'd have to look at. There might be some opportunities to like some little paved some leak offs off the road and like a little rain garden / infiltration thing coming along on the stream that would get a little bit of infiltration rather than just delivering it straight down into a pipe storm sewer. But we haven't started looking at that yet. That was just one of the
That catch basin.
no. Well, it looks like the town has done different things over the years to try and get water off the road on that curve into the culvert in the stream. There's a little puddle on the outside of the curb. The sharp curve that people, yeah. Well, at least it keeps people from going into your yard and into the stream and down the ravine. So it's the guide rail's working at least.
Anyone else on the, I mean, it's just really Mike. Mike, my friend, do you have any other comments or?
We didn't get his name, did we?
Oh, yes, I think.
Did not get his last name, but I got his first name and address.
Oh, okay, you got his address. Okay.
Go ahead, you were. Yeah, that's an exact design constraint for me, like, cause if there's an ideal stream width that I would like to put in into a culvert, but there's the reality of how narrow the channel is downstream, and we're not gonna rebuild the entire stream channel, like that's not within the scope of the project, so there's gonna need to be some balancing. I could see benefit in pulling back the banks of the stretch of stream right around on your property. But you do have a driveway
pretty close to it. And we talked about this. So it's like, there's only so much we could pull back those banks. It would make it less of a steep drop like it is now, which is kind of a fall hazard, but granted, it's your fall hazard and not the general public's, but, and then of course, with this general slope there, you'd still have to do the vegetation management that you want to do. I mean, we could potentially revegetate it with, like, native plants or something that is something that you'd be okay with letting grow, without heavy maintenance, but I think that's for discussion with you later on down the road, but yeah, no, I realize that. I mean, honestly, if we encounter boulders there that have been, because we could see some of the boulders just at the surface of them, it might be useful material to actually put into the stream channel under the road crossing. But yeah, I understand that there's going to be some obstruction. There's going to be some hard materials to pick at and move around.
We'd review the towns. I believe they gave us the as-built maps that show the lateral going into your property. I think it's somewhere near your driveway, but I'll double check that. We would try to not disturb that, or if for some reason it had to be disturbed, it would be included in the culvert plans, I would think, to give you a different stub. I believe it's that the sanitary sewer is down around 8 feet near your driveway.
Are any of these utilities crossing the stream crossing?
The sanitary sewer goes under it.
Goes under it. Okay, that's going to be a design constraint for sure. So yeah,
That'll limit how deep we can go with it.
absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so that might,
There's no public water there right now. Public water's further up Mountain Road. So these folks, you're on a well, I take it, and septic. Okay, I think everybody in the neighborhood's on a well and septic. I don't know if there's gas or not. I'll double check. I think all the other utilities are overhead, but the sanitary is the one on the bottom. And
nice. That's very helpful.
well, what we're gonna do is we're gonna update we actually have a survey map, a progress survey map on the table in the back. We can discuss it afterwards, but we're gonna update our surveys for adding the underground utilities and other things that we located stuff at the surface. We had some questions to give to the town. They're gonna look that up. We're gonna do check the watershed. We're gonna do hydrology and hydraulic calcs for a couple different options, and probably later this winter we'll have some of that for the town to review and reach out to you at that time.
And we mentioned at the earlier part of the meeting that this is meeting number one. There'll be a follow-up public meeting where we'll be presenting recommendations. So you'll see that just as you were noticed for this meeting. So keep your eye out, but we'll be back with unintended concrete ideas for solutions. So 2 months. It's probably going to be 2 to 3 months before I guess it depends how we do it with NVCOG. If we go back and try and do a bunch, we're sort of trying to do these towns in batches. And as it worked out, because Oxford, Seymour, and Naugatuck got hit the worst with the flooding,
two of those towns are in our first batch, so we're trying to get those out of the started. So we'll probably have results on those sooner than we will on some of the other towns. It may be 2 months, something like that. We probably just, I don't know if we'd notice everybody in the neighborhood, but since sure,
We do at least what we did this time and maybe an even better job, but certainly no less than what we did this time. So if you got a notice for today's meeting, I would say we would shoot to make sure you got one for the next. Absolutely. We're glad to take your contact information. I'll connect with you after the meeting. We'll get it coming.
They match the same blue flags that you saw right up at the culvert, or is that disconnected?
actually, I believe the ones he's talking about were done by somebody else.
That's
They
what I
were-
mean. It
yeah.
could be adjacent development, nothing to do with this project. Ours would have been localized when, we'll show you the survey map, but, we're probably 100 feet upstream and downstream of the culverts.
Behind your house? Yeah, that's not related to this project.
No, I don't believe it is. I'll check with the soil scientist, but I don't think there are flags. I think it's somebody from probably mapping something from below coming up the stream.
I'm sorry, don't mean to interrupt, but Mike had written in the comments before when we were talking about septic. He said, I think there's a high pressure gas transmission line. I was told when sewers were put in.
We'll check our utility records. We have gotten feedback from most of the utility companies at this point.
Well, give us your email address before you leave tonight. All right. Thank you.
No, thank you for coming out.
And I do believe that concludes our comments. We heard from Mike, who said he was all set, and I think that wraps it up. So unless anyone has any last words or I think we're all set. That concludes our first set of public meetings. And as we mentioned before, we'll be coming back to you hopefully in a few months. There's some contact information on the screen for the two gentlemen you heard speak tonight, Terry and Ron, and also Craig Stevenson, our project manager. You could send a message to Craig if you have any photos or video you want to share of your experiences or just any other input.
Next meeting.
Next meeting is and get on the mailing list. So that information is there. And thank you very much to everyone who joined us tonight or who is watching the recording later. That's it. Have a great night.
Thank you. Thanks for time and extra for hosting this. It's worked out great.
Audio facilities.
Leave it up. Oh, yeah.